is coming in now. Ooh, and I almost forgot to post this on Facebook as well.
Oh, crap. Were we going to talk? Oh, maybe it's premature. The contest thing. I haven't had time to get down all the nitty gritty about that yet.
Then we'll just pause on it until
next week.
Yeah, that's fine, dude.
Yeah, I should be able to get it together by then.
Sweet.
I got the vague ideas. I just want to make sure I got all my ducks in a row, so to speak.
Yay. Yeah, Steamroller should be a cool one for that.
Yeah. Pop out. Where did it pop out?
It's looking at the Gen Con preview.
I had such a horrible time figuring out a hype. I'm like, I think I've hyped everything I have coming that I care about.
Yeah, I didn't. I don't know. Just this last weekend, I saw Lowlands on the shelf. Do you know anything about it, Trent?
Nope.
Yeah, I didn't either, and it's just it's an interesting, like, it's advertised with Uwe Rosenberg's name, but it's not designed by him. That's what was bizarre about it.
No, that's kind of like what Alchemist, sort of, right?
But I don't know. I don't feel like Alchemist, like, they list Vlada as a developer, but his name isn't like plastered on that box.
That's kind of a weird way to.
Yeah, they're
living off somebody else's fame.
Yeah, that's the. I think that's the publisher though trying to do that. I think it's kind of like the Great Designer series sort of thing.
I gotcha.
They want to, like, sell based on the strength of the designer, which, I mean, I get it, but, like, think about it with books. Do they? I guess they do. They put, like, best-selling, best-selling author. There's, like, the best-selling list, which I guess the kind of has stuff. Oh, we have a viewer, and we are live. So, and it's Paul. Hey, he looks like you just saw Ant-Man and Wasp. Any of you guys seen that movie?
Nope.
So Ant-Man and Wasp is kind of a science-y feeling Marvel movie, right? So are you into it, Andy? Did you like Ant-Man at all?
I have preferred the ones that are like the oddball superhero ones. Like, I've liked Deadpool, Ant-Man, and the latest Spider-Man one I liked. Like, the Avengers and the X-Men can take a flying dive into oblivion for all I care at this point. But
I heard the X-Men last one was bad, but the last X-Men thing I saw was the Logan, and I think before that I'd even skipped over several of the, like that. They've really been obsessed with Wolverine.
And I don't know why. I never, ever, ever gave a rat's rear end about Wolverine.
Yeah, and it's like they changed him. Like in the actual comic, or I don't want to say the comic because I don't know that, but in the cartoon, I don't remember him being that deep of a character. He wasn't.
He's pretty much growly slash.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I knew him as, and like they've tried to push him in all these different directions and make him like tragic, and that's cool. I mean, I don't know. I enjoyed Logan, but I did not. I really like Logan actually a lot. I thought Logan was fantastic.
Yeah, no, I had to go I took my daughter the last X-Men one. It was just like, this is not. Of course, the X-Men ones in general I have not thought they've been good. It just seems like, how many characters can we slap on a screen in the time frame we have? Therefore, you never actually explore the depths of any of them.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I didn't dislike this last Avengers Infinity War like I thought I would.
I have not watched it yet, actually.
I'm always like, I always think they're good movies. Well, I mean, I don't know. They're always entertaining movies that accomplish what they set out to do, and what they set out to do is something that I feel like I can get behind if somebody else is getting behind it too. But I feel like it's a movie that if I were to watch alone, I think it would make me cynical.
Yep. I don't know. I just give her crap because she's like extremely into all comic book and superhero things or whatever.
Yeah.
And her favorite character was Quicksilver, so I constantly bring that up after he died in the Avengers movie.
Oh no. Jeez, Andy.
She gets sad about it, and I'll be like, hey, you know what? At least it was over for him fast.
Yeah. The thing I was gonna say, like, okay, so if somebody says like it's almost like they just prefer comic books, you know, and they like anything comic book, right? Comic book related. Is that like geeking out? Or because I feel like, you know, we're critical about board games. It's not just like, you know, anything is great because it's a board game, you know?
Yeah.
Like, but I guess people who like comics almost always have like comics that they consider better than others, right?
Right. Yeah, definitely. Well, and I totally agree. When I used to listen to the Nerdist podcast back in the day, a few years ago, he had I think the best definition for geek/nerd. And that's the one I use. And what he said is a geek/nerd is not about what you like, but how you like it. And so like you're a geek/nerd about something is if you obsess about that one thing to the point that it's probably minorly damaging other aspects of your life, or if you have trouble like thinking of other things that don't pertain to that thing. Which I'm like, yeah, that's me. When I'm obsessed about everything else, I have to relate in my brain to that.
The nerd brain.
Yep. So the advantage of the nerd brain is as long as you're using it for the purpose to which like it's obsessed on, it's a really big advantage. But if you're like, you know, nerdy into comic books and you're trying to be like a used car salesman, this is not going to go well for you. So like he defined like sports nerds are the people that like know all the statistics of all the players and they are like sports geeks.
But okay, well, but is there a difference between geek and nerd? You know, and
I think they're well. The only definition change I've heard between the two is that geeks are slightly more obsessive. Nerds are supposed to be slightly more intelligent. I use them both interchangeably, really.
Hey, the Talos Principle is a fantastic video game. Just dropping it in the chat. And yeah, I'm glad that you've enjoyed it. The expansion I thought was really fantastic as well. So if you haven't gotten to that one, it's like I want to say Gethsemane, but it's not. It's something like that.
Yeah, I'm playing Among the Sleep right now. That's weird. It's like a horror puzzle game as experienced through the eyes of a 2-year-old.
That sounds interesting, actually. You said Among the Sleep?
Among the Sleep. It was on sale on Steam. Yeah, you play a 2-year-old with your like talking teddy bear and like you're trying. Yeah, you like experience horror. So like your mom and like the ex-husband started arguing like at the door. And so like the screen gets all fuzzy, like the baby's having a panic attack. And
wow.
And you move faster by crawling.
So you're like, it like goes full on like you are a baby.
You are the 2-year-old. Yeah.
Psychologically experiencing it as though you're a baby.
Right. Yeah. So you have to like pull open drawers to like climb up to shelves and get things and stuff.
So Andy, what drew you to this game?
I don't know. I saw the commercial and I'm like, oh, you play a baby? That sounds freaking fascinating.
I just wanted to connect it in Andy's head where that's at.
Weirdly enough, actually, I for the most part really dislike horror movies. Like it does nothing for me. It just annoys me. But like horror video games, like I love them.
Yeah, I love them too, generally. But this one has me like scratching my head. It says that it has support for the Oculus Rift, so you can feel like you're a baby. Like I just feel like it would be really obnoxious, and it should like blur the speech of all the adults. And
Yeah. No, yeah. Like your mom's carrying you up to bed, and you get like the shoulder view of being a baby carried on the shoulder. It's all freaky. I haven't got very far into it yet. I've just started to see like the weird ghosts the baby is experiencing or whatever.
Nice.
So yeah, like it's so far I think my basic idea is that the point of this game is either going to be, yes, indeed, there was some spiritual craziness going on, or like it was just the baby having a nightmare.
Nice. So I'm gonna go ahead now and get started before Andy wakes up from his dream within a dream within a nightmare within a video game.
Hey, that's pretty much what I think the universe is.
A 2-year-old's nightmare.
It's all in my head. That's yeah.
Can you prove that the universe isn't a simulation?
No. By the way, did you ever hear what a guy was on Through the Wormhole justifying that? And I was like, oh, what evidence do you have? And he's like, well, how do you know reality from fake? A fake photo, if you magnify it enough, it's little pixels of color, right? It's like, what are we made out of? Atoms, little pixels. And I'm like, my head just exploded. No. Probably not.
It doesn't get me. No. It's... You have to, the burden of proof is on you. You can't just suggest something ridiculous and say,
"Oh, I didn't believe he was true. I just thought it was an interesting idea."
Yeah. Well, it sounds, positing the idea of the multiverse or whatever. Seem to enjoy those, right, Andy?
Multiverse is great stuff.
Dinner table discussion in the Dennison household.
Yeah, and the microbiome.
Nice. All right, guys, here we go. 3, 2, 1. Hello and welcome to The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly, a podcast about board games. I'm the host of The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly, Joe Sallin. I'm also joined tonight by my two most decorated hosts, I guess, the ones that have the most episodes behind them. Unfortunately, we're missing out on TC Reed, which I hope everything is going well with his kind of little vacation he's taken here. He doesn't get a chance to go on vacation like hardly at all because of his job, but right now he's got some family visiting, so hopefully everything's good. But I'm also being joined here by two guys that have been with me the longest, and that is Andy Dennison. How you doing tonight, Andy?
Not too bad.
Andy and I were reflecting on video games. Being teachers in the summer, you do get to catch up on those things that you don't play really during the school year. Well, some of us don't get to play them, and other people have geek brains that make them obsessed about everything except for that, and then they work super efficiently at everything else so that they can just cling back to their hobby. I wonder if this is cutting too deep to anybody. Maybe it's cutting too deep to Trent Ham, who's here with me tonight. How you doing, Trent?
All right. Let's do this.
When was your last deck that you built for an LCG?
I was working on my crane deck for L5R earlier today.
Okay. It was today.
Before the bruised ribs.
Yeah, now he's got bruised ribs. And there's no guarantee that at some point in this episode, Trent, provided that he hasn't got all of his stuff right next to him, and maybe he's going to just build a deck right in the middle of this episode, and he'll have one done, and he's going to post it online in the show notes after it's done.
I wouldn't guarantee that, but I wouldn't rule it out.
Can't rule it out. So I got Andy, I got Trent, and I'm Joe Sallin. So it's great to be back on here, guys, and kind of get some weird scheduling is going to be coming up here. I think that we're regular for next week. We might be running with a little bit of a reduced panel, but I think that it's the next week after that it gets a little funky because there will be some conventions for some of us, and I think we got vacations and otherwise going on. So maybe we'll be able to plan some satellite episodes where we can record from a space that isn't the comfort of our basements, but for now,
hotel internet.
Yeah, it'll be more based on the internet we can have access to. So hopefully, that's the killer, man. And I've been able to record from one of the places that I've been on vacation to, like kind of a regular standing place in Florida. But there's no telling with the place I'll be staying at for Gen Con. But I'm pretty sure, Trent, you're also going to Gen Con?
Yes, indeed, with all 4 other members of my family.
The whole band.
Yep.
You guys are going in a covered wagon. Wagons east.
Pretty much.
They're larping.
So, Andy, you're not going anywhere.
No.
Andy's on strict house arrest. No, you're not going anywhere for Gen Con, but you've got a different.
Yeah, I'll be gone about the 27th to the 7th of August.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much my goal for that is like my wife's a U.S. chess delegate again, so I'm gonna go with her. We're gonna do what we can when we have time, and she's gonna do chess things, and I'm gonna play solo games in the hotel room.
Mm-hmm. Well, hold on to that thought, man. We're going to talk about board games in this podcast. So,
we do that.
We're also going to talk about my review. Is actually going to be something that I got from you, and we're going to talk about like some types of games that your wife enjoys. But before we can do that, I'd like to quickly thank our sponsor, Game Surplus. Check them out at GameSurplus.com. Bringing the world board games to you. There's some new stuff that's just got on their shelves. I saw recently. They restocked, I believe, the Penny Adventures, something, right? It's like, I think it's Penny Adventures. They're like a roll and write sort of a game where each of them is themed on a different adventure. I thought it was Penny Adventures. I might be thinking of it wrong, but those ones sold out real quick because I don't think you could get them available super easy in the US, but they were kind of a European thing that apparently word of mouth had already spread because those things went quickly. So check out that. Also check out the stuff that you'll find on the Good Word Ugly podcast picks, and you can get 10% off if you listen to the code coming up later in the episode. So also thanks to I not thanks so much as let's highlight the relationship that we have with another podcast, another sort of media creation for tabletop, and that is the Bridge City Board Gamers, our cardboard cohorts, which basically that relationship just means that, we kind of work in tandem. We are promote each other and are very interested in what the other is putting out. And consistently, I actually just had a chance to listen to the latest 3 or 4 episodes that they put out. And one of them was a fantastic little sort of cardboard in the classroom, is what he calls it. But this one was only like 12 minutes long. And then I listened to another recent one, but I only got about halfway through that. But what these episodes are about is how he's using Norm and Ryan are using the board games and tabletop in their actual teaching classrooms. So they're actual teachers, and it's really cool some of the stuff that they're coming out with and the perspectives. It's kind of like a more education-focused ludology by the great Jeff Engelstein, which I mean, these types of episodes that will leave you feeling by the end like more about the hobby. And also, like, here I feel like there's a lot that you can sort of learn about that's not just you have to be a classroom teacher for. These are like, if you have any sort of a way in which you interact with young people, you can like use these to teach. And also they're just sort of like thoughts and directions to sort of plan what game you want to use to teach a certain thing. And you can do this, even just as like raising kids, it really, this touches on all parts of life. And I think it's a very entertaining and amazing podcast. So check out Cardboard in the Classroom and their review series, Cardboard Conjecture. So back to reviewing games, which I'm going to kick off here because Andy, your wife, actually, I can thank her for me getting a chance to play this game.
Actually, my nephews, but it works.
So it was given to the nephews first and then given to you?
No. It was a birthday present from my nephews and sister-in-law.
Tell them to listen to this episode because they're probably going to want to hear. I have some very, very positive things actually to say, some surprising things, because my experience is, let me first tell you what I'm reviewing. This is the Escape the Crate. It's like a subscription-based escape room where they mail you a box and then you're given like a certain, the idea is time travel. It's kind of like Time Stories. If Time Stories wasn't, hampered by like antiquated dice rolling mechanisms, and also required you to make this huge upfront investment to get into. So I'm not a big fan of Time Stories, but anyway, Escape the Crate has physical puzzles and nice physical pieces that are all kind of hidden within envelopes. It most closely reminds me of the Escape the Box. I think it's Escape... Like
the Stargazer's Manor one?
Yeah, the Stargazer's Manor. It's Escape Room in a Box, I think is what they call those ones. And Mystery at Stargazer's Manor is the more concrete thing that I can put my memory on. But the thing is, like, you end up with these sealed envelopes inside the game. The game does require you to have internet. It requires you, but it's like a simple web browser. So you just have like a laptop there, and it's got like all the different steps you'll go through. But it does have those physical pieces. So here's what I would compare this to. So it is different from Exit, which is the other really big current escape room series. Because Exit, you destroy the game, and the designers actually, like, they want you to only be able to play the game once. They want you to sort of destroy the game. They want it to be consumable. Unlock is like further towards the Unlock is just like a deck of cards, and literally when you get done, you can just take that entire deck of cards, shuffle it, and put it back in the box, and you'd be pretty much set up. You know, there's sometimes when you might want to put it in order, and they do have a specific order that the game can be put into. But I've not played one yet where it was like you had to like look at the card that was underneath a certain card, so the deck even had to be stacked. It was just like as soon as you get done playing the game, you can pretty much just shuffle the deck and you put it back in the box and you're done. But it requires a large like app integration. So like, you know, it's very technologically oriented, and it's also short, but it's got some really amazing artwork. So this one sits kind of in the middle. I felt like Escape the Crate involved much better pieces than what I would have otherwise expected in like a mass market thing. It's like, it's almost like the people that are putting this out wanted you to have like nice physical pieces. They have like Monopoly grade metal pieces that you'll find, and other different things like that they maybe went out into their yard to pick up. But like, there's some pretty cool things that they put inside this box in these different envelopes. And, you know, they make for nice manipulatives where it's more than just, you know, it's more than just an app and then an illustration. There actually is physical pieces. So that's kind of cool. You don't see that all that much. But generally, the puzzles are going to be formed like you're going to be doing like kind of thinking in the window of your mind. You know, it's not going to be like where you've got like a special contraption that you're trying to like figure out. It's going to be basically trying to put together like what path are we headed in. And if you struggle with that type of thing, like me and my family do, there's a nice lot of hints online. So it does have like some pretty nice, like for every puzzle, there's probably between 7 and 15 hints that you can click on, you know, and they go in order. So that way, like, you know, it just gives you tiny little bits. That way you can figure out the rest, you know, and that way it doesn't like steal, like unwrap the Christmas present for you entirely with like a huge dump of information. It's just like little bits at a time. So I really appreciated that. I thought that the use of what was physically there was incredible. I think that the fact that they've got the artwork and where exactly on the box it's going to be printed, and I mean they used everything there, like everything inside the box, everything. Some things that were kind of on the outside. It was just really a well integrated and deep and involved puzzle that I was impressed that I was dealing with, because it was very low on technology and very successful in its escape room simulation. I think that you know, this is something that you could definitely subscribe to and feel like you got your money's worth. So that's my thoughts on Escape the Crate, which is a subscription, you know, where you monthly or however many, like once every couple of months you'll get stuff. My other experience with a subscription game was Hunt a Killer, and I thought that was miserable. I thought it was a terrible experience because they only gave you a few little shreds of information. And I didn't feel like I got to any conclusion by what I was given from a $30 investment. Like there was just nothing I could really even latch on to in that. I felt like so much of the game was like look online, and everything I could find out about the game was people that were also like me searching for stuff online. It's a weird fad that I didn't understand why it was actually being successful. I felt like, you know, adventure games need to have a solution and need to have like, you know, divided episodically. So that way you don't feel like, okay, well, I'm waiting for the next month and like there is no resolution to anything I've got here. I don't even know if I found out enough information with what I've been given. But anyway, I hated Hunt a Killer. Escape the Crate would have been much along the lines of what I was hoping for. You know, a marginally connected experience between game to game. But for the most part, just a really nice self-contained escape room in a box experience. The only thing that I would say is a better single escape room is that escape room in a box werewolf game, the one where it's like the werewolf experiment, because that one had like quite a bit more. Like it had like actual physical padlocks and stuff like that, and it was about double. I would imagine about double the price of what this was. So if you want something that's even more physically manipulative and has even higher production, then go to that. But you're paying double, and you're getting a similar experience puzzle wise out of it. So I would go with this. But I know that your wife really enjoys like geocaching and like designing puzzles and then solving other people's puzzles. So maybe that's why this one got purchased for you guys, Andy.
Yeah, she really enjoys it. I enjoy it a fair amount as well. Like I said, the thing that I think makes these better, because I played a couple of the other ones that were like the small box, just all cards ones. Then I kind of played these, and then we went back to one of the small box kind of card ones. And I thought the only problem I think with the card ones, comparative to this kind of thing, is that, they tell you it's like you can play with however many you want, bull, because nobody can sit around and see that stinking little card. You can't have 8 people around a table with just those cards and everyone feel involved. Whereas I thought like the Escape the Crate with the physical components and just kind of bigger things, like you could reasonably have, 3, 4, 5 and fairly have them all feeling invested in what's going on. And then often also in the Escape the Crate, the shtick is there's always like a set number of symbols you're supposed to get through. And there's a lot of situations where you can be working on more than one symbol at once. So, you can hear you guys look at this stuff, see if you can figure this out. I'll go look through here. And I just thought it supported more people better than the ones that are just kind of all cards and nothing else.
I definitely more than Exit. I actually feel that Unlock doesn't do too bad for that because of how easy it is to pass a card. But in Unlock, a lot of times your item, like the book, the single book, tends to be like more like passed around, whereas the deck itself can just kind of sit there and people look through it and then put it down.
Yeah. So anyway, no, this one we're enjoying. We actually have the newest one sitting on the dining room table we haven't got to yet. But that's, I think, another good point with this is they are resettable. Even though they have all the nice physical stuff and components, as long as you don't shred the envelopes when you open them. So like I let Joe borrow them. We're going to collect it from Joe and basically sort of re-gift them back to my aunt because she really likes these things as well.
Yeah, no, it's nice. You can like put it back together. And the thing is, though, some of these things, like Andy, I'm sorry, but like you had already opened the envelopes once with their like little stickers that held them on, and so like I was able to put them all back, and if I wasn't, I just taped them. But like, you get down to like 4th or 5th in line, and you might end up just having an envelope full of secret information just be kind of like bursting at the seams, wanting to sneak its way out of the envelope before you even get to it.
But I mean, they're a lot of fun. Like I said, I think I've enjoyed these more than some of the ones that are kind of more mass market and people know.
I think it's cool that, well, so I'm looking at their website right now. It costs $30, which is how much I anticipated, 30 plus shipping. And then you can buy old ones for 40. So like the idea is that like you're getting that $30 price for being subscribed. Whereas if you want to buy the old ones, which it looks to me like the old ones kind of sell out. Like they sell these pretty well. But I was excited to try another one because of how much it actually connected to like, a historical or an interesting like environment. Like it's trying to teleport you back in time. It's trying to, like make you feel like you're a knight in the Queen's service or something like that. It's trying to burst you out of what generally limits that escape room to a physical space. And I like that it's existing in your mind space for that. And they're really just they're intricate puzzles, but they're very like their quality control is really great, which is hilarious because if you scroll down their website, like their FAQ that I was clicking on is like riddled with typos. And I was thinking like, man, like I'm glad that we got this. And I knew that it like I'd already played it because like if I was like interested in this game and I was scrolling down their website and I saw typos, I'd be like, I don't trust this. This is going to be like a 2-hour puzzle that's like totally ruined by the fact that there's typos. It's going to be a Jack the Ripper. What was it? Case? It's the Sherlock Holmes Consulting
Consulting
Detective Case 3,
yeah.
where it's the one that was just like unsolvable because there's missing information.
Yeah, that's awful. I hate that one.
Like if I would have suspected that had I not already played one before I went to their website and looked at like 5 or 6 typos in their FAQ. So maybe
another good thing to note too is if you don't like reading the text or anything, there's like voice recordings you can play that will set the scenario for you and scene and stuff like that on the app. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah. And almost everything is just like read. Like you can just click on it for it to be read right off of like a little widget on the web page, which is really, really easy. So that's the Escape the Crate. The what is it? The Stargazer's Manor. Stargazer's Manor is it's Escape the Room. Stargazer's Manor board game is what they call those. It's weird. Like there's Escape the Room, and then there's Escape Room in a Box, and now there's Escape the Crate. This is Escape the Crate, and I specifically played the Queen's Army, and I'm looking forward to trying the Bonnie and Clyde one. So that was my review, and now kicking it into a game by the guy who designed Dominion that has kind of a bit of a difficult to it went through some mommy and daddy are fighting moments, I believe.
Yes.
Kind of had like some difficult availabilities because of who published it and things. But anyway, Trent, you take it from here.
Okay, I'm going to talk about Nefarious, which is designed by Donald Vaccarino. It's available by a mainstream publisher now, but I honestly, it's widely available now. I don't even know who's currently publishing it, but I know it's widely available. It went through a very weird publishing history. It was originally published by Ascora Games, and by the time it actually came out, the first printing of it came out, the company had basically folded and the guy behind it vanished. So Donald X Vaccarino tried to get the rights back to it, really couldn't, and just sat on the contract for 5 years waiting for it to get done so that he could issue it with another company because he had a couple expansions planned and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it just had a really limited release, and then it just sat and did nothing for 5 years. Anyway, I have that really old edition. So actually, I now can't get the new expansions for it, even if I wanted them, because they redesigned the cards and everything. So
you're not gonna get rid of yours or buy the new one just so you can get expansions?
Well, let me finish my review and I'll get back to that. My wife and I used to play this game a fair amount when I first got it because I got the old edition of it, and we played it off and on over the years. We have a couple of friends that really liked it. Good, can't really complain. But the reason I'm reviewing it now is because it's suddenly become a family hit for me with all 5 members of my family. And we've been playing it quite a bit lately. So I'm going to explain what this game is. It's basically a simultaneous action selection game. So everybody has a hand of 4 cards. One of them set. There are basically 4 different actions you can take. 2 of them essentially just generate revenue. The third one basically allows you to draw a card, and 4th one allows you to play a card. Straightforward, really straightforward. So the revenue you generate, you're going to use that to pay for the card whenever you play it. Really straightforward stuff. You play cards until the point value on them adds up to 20 to be the winner. If 2 players are simultaneously at 20, you keep playing rounds until someone is by themselves at 20 or above. So there are definitely games where 2 people end up tied at 20, and then the subsequent round, some other doofus will jump to 22 and win. That happens. That's part of the game. So what is there to talk about? There's a few interesting things about it that are worth talking about. First, the inventions, although they have point values on them, all have special abilities. Some of them affect all the other players at the table. Some of them affect you. They involve getting money, losing money, drawing cards, discarding cards. So pretty much any effect you can imagine that would affect some aspect of the game state is on these invention cards. At the start of the game, you get 3 of them at random, and there's a lot of effects that will let you draw more, and some that will make you be forced to discard, and so on. So you will definitely see quite a few of these invention cards throughout the game. And like I said, you're just trying to get to 20. The other part that's interesting about this is the speculate mechanism. It's one of the 4 action cards that I said earn you money. So what it is when you play this, you have these 5 minions that come to you at the start of the game. And then you can essentially bet with one of those minions. Speculate means you have a little board in front of you, like a player mat, and you choose to put one of those minions that you have on one of the 4 spots on the board that represent the 4 action cards that you have. Then, for the rest of the game, whenever one of your neighbors plays that particular action card that you put a minion on, you gain a coin, which is the main resource of the game. So it's effectively a way to invest in what's going to happen in the future. That has good and bad to it, because while it's a really good moneymaker, it slows you down your development early on in the game, because you're spending around just investing in a minion and not doing anything else. By the time that you actually catch up with the earnings and the turns and everything else, the game can be over, especially if a game is fast-paced. The final thing that's worth noting about this game is that it seems relatively simple, and it plays very quickly. 15 minutes for like a 5-player game of this is completely normal. But the thing about it that really makes it entertaining and better than it could have been just with that is that each game comes with 2 twists. There's this deck of twist cards. And the twists basically modify some core rule of the game. So, like, you might have a thing where it says every time you play an action card, you're actually going to do it twice. That might be one of the twists for the game. Another one might be is if you have coins, the number of coins you have at the end of the round, you have to round it down to the nearest 5. That's another twist. There's about 40 of them in the copy I have, and you play 2 of them at random each game. And what you find is, if you play it very much, is that those really fundamentally change the relative values of the actions that you're playing. Some of them become better, some of them become worse, and you have to evaluate what that is, what the twists are doing to those cards well, in order to be able to play. Furthermore, you also have to evaluate and make a guess as to how other players are going to evaluate that, because that's going to change how you're going to invest in your minions. So it's a very simple, very quick, light game. I think ends up rewarding some replay, because you start seeing the different combinations of twists and you have to evaluate them. You have to evaluate how the game state is changing based on the personalities of the other players. It isn't just a straightforward playing. There's a fair amount of interaction in this. And I quite enjoy it. And I found that my 8-year-old plays it really well. We had a game yesterday, in fact, that I won, but literally all 4 of the other players were going to break 20 on the next round. And they all would have won, or been tied, or some permutation. That tells you that we're all getting it. I mean, we all understand what's going on and play it well. That's an 8-year-old, a 10-year-old, a 12-year-old, and 2 adults. And so it works perfectly well for our family. I gotta say, I recommend it for that. And because of that, I've actually been thinking a little bit about getting the new version, just so that there's more stuff, more cards and things like that. Don't expect it to be some sort of great strategic masterpiece, but it is quick. It gives you a fair amount of decisions in the time space, and it's not like it doesn't come with a steep learning curve like Race for the Galaxy does. It's pretty easily taught, and there's a fair amount of decisions, and it plays quickly, and there is some variety. And that's Nefarious.
Cool. All right, so I've played this one. It's kind of like, I don't know, at least with just the base game that I played, it was kind of similar to Temporum, more so than I thought it was similar to like Dominion, where the card pool and sort of like it was about, pretty simply about exchanging, your currency for like victory points. It seemed like that was kind of like where you're eventually getting, right? That you're getting these cards that you're going to buy that are essentially going to eventually be worth a certain amount of victory points. And like the more that you could get, the more expensive they got. Does that sound accurate, Trent?
I would say so, yeah.
I mean, we're like the cards that are worth the most victory points tend to cost like significantly more. As in, like, if you only want like 3 points, it's like $6. But then if you want 4 points, you're paying like $8 and or $10, and it just gets more and more and more. Like every extra point, because you're like being more efficient action wise, every extra point starts costing more and more. Which reminds me a bit of Temporum, but this one is a lot more like self-contained and kind of more like Race for the Galaxy, where you're selecting a role, which I thought was pretty cool. That was like a very simple Race for the Galaxy.
Yeah, it's a step towards my wife and I also agree that it's a step towards Race for the Galaxy, which is a game that I hope to teach to my kids at some point. That will be an experience.
Evil. All right, so that was Nefarious. Andy, anything to say? Have you tried this one?
I haven't played that one at all, no.
For the longest time, Trent was the only person that even like had a copy of it. Like there was, they were just so difficult to find. But yeah, I think that sums up pretty close to how I feel about it too, Trent. So Anyway, let's go ahead now and move into the only game that made it onto all 3 of our top 10 lists. The only one in common, and that's Andy reviewing a weirdo map. Just a strange. Oh goodness, no! I don't want to say weirdo, but a strange behaving map that turns the Age of Steam system on its side.
Yeah, so I'm gonna review. My group got a chance to play the Age of Steam Taiwan Cube Factory map. So I'm not gonna go over how you play Age of Steam in this. There's enough videos, you can look that up. So the thing is, what does Taiwan Cube Factory do different? Well, the neat thing about Taiwan Cube Factory is it actually removes a little bit more of the randomness from Age of Steam. So in normal Age of Steam, you have what's called the production roll, where you roll a bunch of dice and that tells you what new cubes go out on the board. In Taiwan Cube Factory, there is no production. You can take a production action, but it does a different thing. But there's no new cubes that will seed the board except what you get out there. So normally in Age of Steam, you deliver these cubes, you throw them back in a bag, and that's the end of them. In Taiwan Cube Factory, every cube you deliver, you're going to keep. And then there's kind of this chart on the corner of the map that tells you what colors you can fuse together to make a new color to put it out on the map. So for example, if I have a black and a red cube, maybe I can turn that into a purple, and I can put that purple cube out on any city I choose to. So I have to get cubes in such a way to score money, but also collect the cubes I'm going to need in order to fuse new cubes so that I don't run dry. Because in this map, you could end up in a situation where you're doing pretty good on revenue, but then find that, oh, look, I have like all red cubes. I can't do anything with that. Oh, God. And then like there's nothing new to come out on the board. The map is also pretty dang tight. Like we played it at 4 and yeah, within seconds you're in each other's faces. You know, it's just a very tight map like that. What the production actions does that's really nice is instead of adding cubes to the queue of the dice rolls that go out, is the production action lets you go into the bag and pick 3 cubes of your choice, any color. Now you can't put them out, but you can use them to fuse into new cubes. So typically in a lot of Age of Steam games I've played, at least in the base game, there's a very big battle early on to get a hold of locomotive and blah, 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 blah. The one
urbanization.
Urbanization becomes a big one. In this one, I have a feeling on a second play, production would become just a bloodbath trying to get a hold of production. Because that's how you're going to sustain yourself into the late game. But kind of what's cool about it is it takes Age of Steam and basically removes all randomness from it. The only randomness is the start of the cubes on the board. After that, it's completely non-random, and everything that happens is going to be based on the choices the people make. It definitely adds a pretty big layer of complexity on the Age of Steam. It requires a lot more planning and careful stuff. Oh, the other little thing it adds that makes things difficult is all building costs are doubled. So if you want to build through, well, normally how Age of Steam works, we'll say, is most people try to build 3 tiles because you can build up to 3, and they try to build them on the grasslands, right? Well, normally that will cost you $6, which isn't too bad in Age of Steam world. Now try doing the same thing costing $12. That's, oh God, it can bleed your economy dry in no time just trying to build. There were several times where everyone was just like, I'm not building more track. No, I can't do it. But you can take the engineering action, and well, engineer in the base game lets you build up to 4 tiles instead of 3. Engineering action lets you pay the normal cost for building on this map instead of the double cost. So what it does, what I felt it does, is it kind of moves that like battle over urbanization and locomotive to those 4: urbanization, locomotive, engineering, and production. Those all become very, very valuable picks from the beginning of the map, instead of like, you know, these are really good early game, these are really good late game. And it even made first move become very, very good to choose, because once the map has kind of been built and people have multiple access to the cities, right? Like there was several situations where I had to basically defensively take first move because I was going to put a cube out, and I knew the other player had enough money to beat the auction, and then he could deliver this cube I just spent forever getting. So it made the auction like choices much more crunchy. The choice of what cubes to deliver where much more crunchy. It definitely just upped the game on this. It's definitely, I would say so far, the favorite map I've played. It definitely makes things interesting. I would not suggest it as a first map for somebody. I think the danger of going bankrupt on this map is much higher if you don't plan very, very carefully. So anyway, that's Age of Steam Taiwan Cube Factory. I believe actually that one, if you buy it, also comes with African Diamond Mine, which I have not played. But you're playing like tunneling trains, so not only do you have links, but you have depth as an upgrade, which is really weird. So that's another one I want to try sometime, just to how does that work? So anyway, that's Age of Steam Taiwan Cube Factory. I mentioned it, and I heard from a few people who play Age of Steam that they're like, yeah, I really, really like that one.
I am so jealous I didn't get to play in this one. There was a bankruptcy.
Yes, there was.
Yes, there was at the last turn. Yeah. And
ran out of money and ran out of cubes to deliver, and so
And there was a lot of people really closer on 15 shares by the end of the game too. Oh, yeah. It was rough. It really was. It was a good time. I like it.
Well, unfortunately, Andy will not be hyping what I put in the show notes, which is the human body map of Age of Steam. I think he's just...
I've dealt with my human body enough this week. No.
Is that even a real thing? Is there a human body map of Age of Steam?
No, it's not human body. It's no, I think it is human body. Yeah, like no, Alvin VR
or something.
Alvin VR, he has one with like the nervous system and blood vessels, and yeah, there's a big picture of the human body, and like your cities are like the brain and the heart and stuff. Because Alvin VR.
Yeah, dude, that guy's designed so many games or so many maps for Age of Steam,
and they're always the really wonky ones too.
Yeah, they're ones that he wants to push in different directions. He's like a mathematician, dude. So, all right. Well, thank you, Andy, for the Taiwan Cube Factory. I was super interested in that. Trent, did you give, like, what did you think about this one? Was this your favorite map?
It's probably my favorite map that I have played. Wow. I really want to play it again. It's a really fun experience. And like I said, it becomes a perfect information game. After the initial setup, there's no hidden, there's no random, there's no anything.
That's like 18xx, dude. That's like...
Yeah, it's perfect information after that. But it's a fun ride, and you feel like you are really screwing up, and because you probably are. I mean, seriously, one of the players went bankrupt, and two of the remaining three were like 14 or 15 stocks. Yeah, and that's like right at the end of the stock track. So that should tell you something. This map is a spiral of death.
Yeah, they were at 14, 15 on the stock track, and had it gone another round, we might have had another bankruptcy.
Jeez.
It was rough.
That sounds awful, yeah. Well, that's hilarious. So next time, I really want to be there, guys. That is just such an amazing-looking game. The Taiwan Cube Factory, to me, sounds like the must-play for me of Age of Steam maps. Mm-hmm. So anyway, that's our reviews, and now we're going to be moving into the actual meat of this episode, which was suggested by Trent's wife, who they just celebrated 15 years. By the way, congratulations, Trent, for your 15-year anniversary, man.
Whoop, whoop.
Congratulations.
So anyway, she suggested this episode. So would you like to kind of describe what it was, or?
We were just having a conversation about how a couple games do things in a very unique way. And she's like, we just started conversing as like, what are things that games do, or like this is the only game or only one, or you've only ever seen this mechanism once or twice ever and you'd love to see people explore it more. And we were kind of riffing on different ones, and I just decided it would make a good episode topic. So here we are.
Definitely. So Andy, I think you've got like an actual set like regimen, right? You already had some stuff written down?
Yeah, I wrote just some basic ideas down of things like I like in certain games and wish kind of you would see it more.
Sure, yeah. So I don't want to get off on rabbit holes here, but so are we thinking like, you know, to leave it up to sort of like the way that a mechanism like, or a mechanism in a game, the way that it sort of leaves you, like the taste it leaves in your mouth?
Yeah, it's like the ones I'm mentioning are ones that I wish would be explored in a different game or like in a different genre in a way.
That's kind of the way I went with it too.
Okay, cool. Yeah, well, I didn't know where to draw the line mechanism-wise, because, you know, like Board Game Geek has their 33 mechanisms, and they, you know, like it's...
Nah, I tried to keep it pretty specific. Like, I like this in this game, and how would it...
Okay.
Yep, me too.
Because, I mean, we're not going to be like, oh, I've just played this really cool game called Ascension, and it had deck building.
Deck building. There needs to be more deck building.
Yeah. So, I guess I had one that I feel like maybe we will see this. So maybe this is much of a prediction as it is like, this is what I like to see. But I don't know, like the levels of customization that board games are sort of like reaching, to me is something I am excited about and like to see more of. I do feel like that's probably automatically coming, but you know, it wasn't exactly, there's not many games that allow you to like craft an intricate piece like the dice in Dice Forge. You know, like that required some sort of like, you know, component actual technology involved. You know, there's some, and there's some like sort of some of those sort of nifty components, you know, for storing things that can really be interesting. You know, like you've got like in Francis Drake, you had this like treasure chest. It was kind of like it was a blind that you'd like sort of slot things through, and you were actually sort of packing your treasure chest as the game went on with trackable, you know, information. But you know, there's some kind of cute and interesting sort of differences there. But I figured you guys would definitely be able to take this in more of like a direction of actual gameplay features, because and I'll try to interject a few more of the ones that I had been thinking of. But Andy, why don't, since you've got some things, some notes, why don't you take it from here?
One of the things that like first came to mind for me, well, first I'll say there is more than one auction type on my list, but we'll go with the one that I really wish you would see more of. And what I would like to see maybe more done in other auction games even, or maybe Euro games, is the what they often call the waterfall auction in 18xx. That first initial auction where you buy the privates is really, really interesting, about whether you buy the top one, where you get a bid. If I buy the top one now, you know, because the way it usually works is you can either buy the top one or you can bid on a lower one. And then once you buy one, if you're the only one bidding on a lower one, you just get it. Like there's no more auctioning. And then if you and another person's bidding on it, now you have to have a bidding war over it. And kind of that strategic, like, where am I going to put the bids? When am I going to buy? That is a really interesting decision and a really interesting phase of an 18xx game to work out. But then kind of once it's worked out, you don't see it again anywhere in the 18xx game, you know, with 1822 sort of being an exception to that. But you don't see really, or at least that I know.
What if they did that for starting companies as well? You know, I mean, I guess it does it for like priority deal, right? There's like a priority deal that you bid on that comes with a specific, like private in some cases.
Yeah. And so they do that, but I've never seen that particular auction type outside of an 18xx game. And I think that one would make, I don't know how you would use it or where, but it seems like it'd be really interesting if someone could take that and apply it to a new setting.
Yeah. That's an interesting one. What do you think about the waterfall auction, Trent? What do you think that would, how would that change a otherwise standard auction game?
I think that if it was just like, if it was all the game was a waterfall auction, it would be kind of dull. But I'd like to see it as a mechanism in a game where like that's a way of distributing like honestly, because honestly, private companies are this distributing variable player powers in different types of games.
You know what? Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say the game that reminds me of this is the Flow of History.
It's actually one that was literally an unmimicked sentence, and I'm not kidding. It's Flow of History comes closest to doing this of anything I played.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because you've like, if you put out a bid on a specific thing, like, and nobody snipes you, you can on your turn now buy it. You know, it's kind of what this is, what a waterfall auction is like. Only you're doing that, you know, and also, well, it's like almost exactly what it's like. But you can't, in a waterfall auction, you can't just buy it from the person who's bid there. You can't be like, oh, you put $150 on that private? Here you go, $150, I'll take it. You
right.
know?
Yeah, you have to bid it out if you're both bidding on it.
Yeah, there's still competition. So, you know, this is like Flow of History is like that if there was no more, you know, if it was more like the price tag auction in modern art, you know, like a waterfall price tag auction. Now we've dissected Flow of History to its barest pieces. It's a waterfall.
Yeah, that's all there is to the game, people. Nothing.
Yeah, it's a waterfall price tag auction. Which what the hell does that mean? Okay.
Well, that's what it is. That's what.
Well, it's like I don't think of like a fixed price auction, right? Would be like where you just, which I mean is otherwise known as just commerce, right? You set a price and then other people can buy it, but like the window of opportunity is like based on turn order, right? You have the opportunity to take it or not in turn order, and that's what it's like in the Flow of History, which makes it like a fixed price or a price tag auction from modern art. But yeah, I mean, pushing that towards more of into more the traditional auction sense. I wonder how that would work. You know, it'd be interesting to see. But yeah, Trent, did you have one specific mechanism that in your time thinking about it that you really wish you could see in more games than where you've seen it?
Well, I mean, I made a list like Andy did. So.
Well, I have like 5, you know, 5 or so.
Okay, I came up with 4. So I'll go into my first one, which was pair card action selection, like in BattleCon, where when you choose an action, you're actually playing 2 cards, and it's the combination of those cards that end up being your actual action. And yeah, so
like something will determine the range, and you kind of like mix together these two things to make one actual move.
Yes. And I would love to see that export in something more than a game where you just have 2 dudes fighting in a 7-space map. Because that's essentially what BattleCon is. I think that you could do a lot of interesting things with that, like dealing with a company that's like 2 divisions within a company that are both contributing to a project or something like that.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't know how that would all come together, but I'd love to see that explored, because the most interesting part of BattleCon is figuring out you have basically 2 hands of cards that each have like 6 or 7 cards in them, and you're trying to figure out the best pair of them to play to beat whatever your opponent's going to do. And it's action selection is honestly what it is. So you could take that and basically put that in any game where action selection occurs.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
but you've got like, I mean, it's more than just like what there's like red cards and blue cards, right? And so the blue card is kind of like the type of move you're making, and then the red card is sort of like when you're doing it, and then your movement associated with it, sort of, or kind of.
They both contribute. What happens is basically the left card contributes like a number, and then the right card adds plus or minus to the numbers on the card. So like one of them is like a range of 1 to 3, and the other card adds 1 to both ends of the range. And it hits for 2, and the other card adds 1 to the power. That type of thing is what's going on.
I'm thinking differentiating that from like, you know, a game like Gloomhaven, which has a similar, like Gloomhaven's more like you're choosing to use a card as either its top or its bottom function, and you're having to do that with a pair of cards every turn, you know, 1 top and 1 bottom. But I feel like it still is there's more of a finite. So, or you have to go through your entire pool in BattleCon, you know, where you sort of like you're going to get through each, you know, most of these cards until you pick them up. But like what you pair with what is going to create a sort of, you know, its own move on its own, and then how that reacts to what your opponent is doing is how it sort of like gets that Street Fighter feel.
Yes. It's as if you're taking 2 cards and combine them into one. And so what it feels like is rather than having 2 hands of 6 cards, you have like 36 cards.
That is
honestly, that's how it feels in BattleCon to me when I'm playing it.
And so to have that connected to like a resource management game, like like Arkwright or something, like a production where you've got factors. That's a really fascinating thought, Trent.
Yeah, I would love to see something like that in Arkwright, where your pool of cards that you're playing is actually really small, the number of cards you actually have, but they combine, and those combinations basically just multiply what the possibilities are. I'd like to see it. I don't know how that would work out. Someone's actually a game designer would have to do that, but I would be very interested.
Nice. Well, I'll interject one of mine here. I have the specific resource wheel. A resource wheel is a thing that people, when I say resource wheel, a lot of people think like, oh, you mean like in Ore et Labora? No, in Ore et Labora, I don't even think of the resource wheel as being a resource wheel. Like, it's just, the way, essentially, you could do the same thing as Ore et Labora if you just had pieces. It would just be more of a pain in the butt, and every time that essentially what you do is you just use a token, and then the resource wheel moves every single resource in the game up by 1. And so I'm fine with that. I think it's cool. I think it was really cool when they used that together to make Solarius mission with like a dice, different colored dice for different actions. I thought that was neat. But I'm talking about a different resource wheel, because to me, there's only one resource wheel that I think of that has like this so unique feel to it that it feels like there's nothing else like it, and that is the automated production resource wheel of Glass Road. I
almost knew what you were going to say with what you were going to say. Glass Road.
There's like, you have a workshop, and if you supply them with the right materials, they're going to automatically kick into gear and create either glass or brick. But you're going to need those components that you're putting into your stockpiles. You're going to need those to build certain buildings that are going to like give you points in other ways or help you manipulate your landscape to get you points eventually. It's just like, to me, the way that you have this automated production that can just come up to bite you like, oh no, when I get that 1 sand, I have 1 glass, and now I've lost all of my water. It's like, it's this feeling of like, I take one thing that I think of as like not a big deal, positive, like bonus resource, and it's like, no, you just lost one of everything else because you just made a glass, and now, you want to make glass because the game like rewards you for glass and brick and not anything else really out of the gate. But like, it's just such a unique and something that it feels like there's nothing else that really does that exact same thing. And I think that game is full of unique pieces, like the way that you've got like a follow action that you can deprive from other people by drafting a set of actions. To me, like, it just that I've seen that sort of a pool type of drafting before. You pick a set of 5 cards out of 15, and then you play them. You take turns playing them. That's worked before in like Broom Service. And I feel like if there's one other game that does it, does it mean that mechanism has been overdone? It's like, if there's 2 games that we can point to that have a specific mechanism in it, does that mean that we can't put it on this list? But anyway, nobody's saying that, but like, it makes me question. But I say the Glass Road resource wheel to me is just, there's no one that's really done a resource wheel that's that well explored. I don't feel like any other thing that uses a resource wheel does it to do anything you can't just do by having pieces out. So that. Well, let's move on to Andy. Why don't you toss one out here?
Probably the other one I first thought of with this topic, besides the waterfall auction, was the way they do alliances in Three Kingdoms Redux, the alliance token. Just because I think that beautifully fixes what is the problem with so many 3-player games, and that 2 take each other out of the game while the third one basically runs away with it. And unless you're experienced enough in the game to know when you need to switch where to do what to what person, it feels like so many 3-player games just devolve into 2 people taking each other out while the third person runs away with it. And I think in Three Kingdoms Redux, the way they handle that alliance token is just, it keeps that from happening, because the game has a way of, recognizing who is probably currently in the best state and then setting up the other 2 people to work against them. So you don't have to guess so much of it, like who is the biggest threat. Okay, no, they did this last round. Okay, so me and you are going to work against them this round. And I think that just makes a beautiful 3-player experience where, like I said, so many other times when someone's got a Euro game or a fighting game or anything, they're like, oh, well, it plays 3 pretty well. Let's do 3 players. And I'm like always sort of in the back of my mind dreading that, oh, if I get in competition with them right now, is that just handing the game to the other person? And so I just love how that's taken care of in that game, and how it's handled. Now, I don't know if you could specifically do that method in any other kind of game because it's kind of handled through sort of a worker placement auction thing. But I guess what I'm saying is, I wish more games that if they're going to do it at 3-player had a way of making it recognizable who is in the best position that the other 2 people should be somewhat working against. Because I think that's a flaw in a lot of games that can play 3-player is without that. And if you don't have 3 people who know the game real well, it's just going to end up with like a runaway leader winning the game because the other 2 didn't know to stop them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you end up competing, you end up like where there's different things that you can do, but 2 of you end up tailored towards what it seems like what always happens, Andy, is you've got a 3-player game and there's always 2 paths to victory so that there's multiple paths, and so you've got 2 people that specialize in one thing and then they end up taking each other out of the game. Like in Agricola, it's like the 2 people that harness the power of farming end up ruining farming for everybody else, and if you're playing a 3-player game, that means that 3rd player that like ranched and didn't have to deal with anybody's problems. I guess that like that's something that you need to kind of take into consideration, but I definitely enjoy how 3 Kingdoms Redux uses it to balance what is an obvious disadvantage at the beginning, and sort of melts down to like as the game goes on, it becomes less clear who's winning, but the game still has a way of like, putting somebody at a disadvantage, and it's based on how many actions you got to take. I really like this as well for a 3-player balancing little sort of token, some sort of as a catch-up mechanism. It's it's kind of a blatant one, I would say, but at the same time, like it's pretty blatant, Andy, because
but it's not like as heavy-handed as somewhere it's like, oh, you did crappy, here's 10 extra bucks. No, you know what I mean?
Like there still is like, there's different directions you can take. Like if you're the person in last place, you can be like, okay, am I going to use this defensively to make sure I get to take an action, or am I going to use this aggressively to make sure that he doesn't get to take this action, or she doesn't get to take, So I agree, Andy. I think it's a really cool little thing, the alliance system in 3 Kingdoms Redux. All right, next up, Trent doing you got your second out of the 4th that you have.
Yeah, I want to talk about the way that cubes are simultaneously used for both resources and scoring in Sail to India. I don't know if you've ever played Sail to India.
Oh, I keep wanting to, but I haven't had.
But it's a resource management game where there's a pool of resource cubes in the game, and it's a pretty large pool at the start. But what effectively happens throughout the game is people are taking the resources out of the pool and claiming them as victory points. You might like get 3 resources and then spend them to get a victory point. When you take that victory point, it's permanently removed from the resource pool in the game. It's gone. So the pool of available resources to use to score further victory points is reduced. And Sail to India is like a pocket game. It's really small. It's basically you line up a whole bunch of cards in a row and you essentially play a really simple resource management game on them. Is essentially what it is. There's not much to it. But that mechanism has always struck me as the fun part of the game because you're always trying to balance that curve just right. Where like, I want to make sure there's enough resources to get some big scores at the end of the game, but the other player can just rush and get like a bunch of cheap victory points, and there isn't enough resources available for you to get a big score later. Vice versa. I mean, it's got this really nice push and pull to it. And I'd love to see that used in something a little more depth than Sail to India. Sail to India is amazing as a pocket game, but it is a pocket game. It's a small, tiny box game. I like to see this done in a big meteor game. Almost the exact same thing.
A game about meteors, like falling to the earth.
Sure, that'll work.
No, I think that Sail to India, you're making me want to revisit it, Trent, because I think I only played it once when it was the big buzz, and I was just like, okay, that's cool. I liked the same thing that you like about it, which is that I think they call them scribes, right? Like as soon as you score a point, you have to have a scribe that can like move up a track, and there's only so much that any scribe will do before he, like, once you max out your scribe and he's at like 4, he's not going to write any more stuff down for you. So you've got to get a different one of your cubes, which you can take from, sometimes multiple places on the board. And I enjoyed that part of it too. I want to try this one again now, actually.
That was the part I really liked, is that like dwindling resources, got to have scribes, all that stuff. That was what was fun about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it seemed like this one was kind of lost in like the dearth of crazy amounts of micro games that came out at the time.
Yeah. But this was the best of the micro games that I played, of like the tiny box games that were like the big thing. Well, this an eminent domain microcosm. Okay. Oh yeah, one more mechanism I need to mention. Eminent domain microcosm's mechanism of having basically a rule sheet that was completely meaningless. I don't want that one revisited.
Here's a game of cards in a rule sheet you can't transcribe or figure out, so just figure out your own rules. I don't care.
Yeah, I bet that's a case for more games than we would even know, because they go through many different rules edits and people that do those rules editing, which I know that TC has done before, and so is his wife. Like, that's some important work, and you can't make those types of complaints that this game is unplayable when you're the person who's supposed to make it playable.
Yeah. And I will say, Eminent Domain Microcosm is actually enjoyable and fun, but that rule sheet is just the worst I have ever seen. It is really bad.
You guys didn't make it. You didn't get it. It's so rare.
It's a micro game with like 30 cards to it, and I tried to play it twice and couldn't figure out how to get through a game of it.
We got some persevering individuals in our group that have made it through many more difficult games than Eminent Domain Microcosm, and that one made it out and back into the box twice without getting played. That's kind of impressive. Yes. So,
yeah, you want to see real hard, beta Sierra Madre rules.
No.
Oh yes, it's like
I've done that.
They call those fetal rule books. So the mechanism I wanted to introduce here as part of our list is you might be able to point at other games and say, well, they've got something that's similar to this, because I'm going to try to pick apart what exactly it is that I like about it so much. But I'm talking about the game The Great Zimbabwe, and how everybody starts where you win the game if you get 20 victory points. But like by the end of the game, it's rare when anybody still needs only 20 victory points to win, because any of the special bonuses that you can take throughout the game are going to add to how many victory points you need to get. And so there needs to be like an actual reason for you to pursue these. But many of them are like, bonuses that increment, that are just, they get incrementally better as the game goes on. Like you get to where you can harness the power of this special ability more and more because you spent 3 or 4 turns developing it, like banking it up. And so I really like that Great Zimbabwe, as you get special abilities, gets more difficult in relation to the abilities that you got. It's kind of like just how the game's balanced. But here's what I would say it really is. It's kind of like you're buying these special powers, but you're doing it by taking on debt, and that debt needs to be paid back before you can actually win. And so it's just a simple system of debt that's been explored many other times in many other games, but it's like having that be the central focus of the game, where like you're trying to get a victory point threshold, and every single thing that you can get increases that victory point threshold. You can probably see it in other games, but there's like that sort of a race game where your finish line, it can move around, is something that I enjoy quite a bit, especially with how in the Great Zimbabwe, how these are all like extremely impactful abilities that you really want to get, but in the end, I've seen people win without any abilities at all, just because you're taking on this extra debt that makes it more difficult, though you have that extra special ability. It just, there's a lot more at the table, but I love the way that it's handled. And I wish that more games would do what the Great Zimbabwe does by having a variable victory point threshold for you to achieve.
Yeah. And the thing with it is like so many of the abilities look good. So what it is like noise in the signal or whatever. It's like you better like stay on target, or like you're just like, I got to get like 50 points, and none of these really work that well together anymore.
Yeah,
like you got to pick with intention.
You do, yes. They need to combo off each other, but you can get it to where like in one move you can achieve like 15 points. You like build up in like 3 different spots, and you've already built in those 3 different spots before. It's ridiculous. You only need 20 victory points to win the game, and you can get to the point where you can score tons of victory points in one single move, enough to just end the game. But like, how do at what cost? And could other people beat you to their lower victory point threshold? So very, very cool. And that is the Great Zimbabwe. Now we're passing the buck back over to Andy. So what's next on the Andy train? Because that's Andy's train of thought is a literal train that goes on just solid black lines throughout his brain. There is no artwork because that would be pointless.
Yeah, no, well, none of my brain. Yeah, well, I'm pretty left-brained anyway. So another one I came up with to think about was like the planned work cards in Lignum. Having like that would be neat to have in more Euro games where like, think about like Agricola. It's like, I'm going to play this card, and in 3 turns, this is what I need to be able to do. Like in Agricola, you can kind of do that in the sense, but what you're going to do and nobody else does. Whereas like in Lignum, it's like, I'm going to do this in 3 turns to get this benefit. So you're kind of like projecting out what your intentions are, which now leaves you open to other people to mess with those intentions. And that would be more interesting to see, especially like in Euros that are more of the Agricola worker placement style, where it's kind of like, as a lot of people describe, it's not take that, it's I'll take that.
Yeah.
But how much more interesting would it be if you're like, okay, Joe, I
know exactly what you want.
I know you're really wanting pigs in 2 rounds. Let's just make that not happen for you. Like
if I get pigs in round 11, I get 3 pigs for 1, and Andy's like, yeah, that ain't happening.
Yeah, it's like, we'll make sure the turn order doesn't work out for you. But no, seriously, like that would up the interaction level of a lot of those games if you could see what people were kind of going for. But then again, the thing I like about an Lignum is you don't have to use those things to project what you're going to be doing, but the benefits are sweet enough you're going to want to, and if you don't, you're probably going to lose. But I don't know. I think those would like spice up some of the Euros that people quote unquote call dry or something like that, that are a little bit lower on interaction because it's hard to tell what people are necessarily going for. I don't know. It's just those are so much of like the meat of the game Lignum. Like there's a lot of other neat things, but like your strategy needs to be somewhat based around those planned work cards and what ones you intend to utilize and win. And I think that would be an interesting component in other games.
Very cool. So the best thing about that is just the fact that you're like showing people. Essentially, you have to kind of lift your skirt to to be able to take that action, and it's whether or not people let you do it. You can say like, oh, that's what a great ability, but it's like, yeah, to get there, I have to, I still have to feed everybody, and so how am I going to get all the food I need? Just I like it too, Andy. I like that, and you only have it for the 1 round, so it's not like, oh, you got the broken card. It's you just have it the 1 time. So it's interesting that way.
And being able to plan 3 rounds ahead in some of these games too, it's just like, oh God, will I actually be there?
Very cool. All right, Trent.
Okay, so this may have shown up in a game like this. I'm not sure. But one of the things one game I've always enjoyed quite a bit is the Duke, which is an abstract game with pieces that on one side, they basically imagine chess like this. That instead of the pieces in chess are the normal pieces that everybody's familiar with, imagine instead they're double-sided tiles, and on each side of a tile, it tells you how they can move, what their actual movements are. But once you've moved that tile and it reaches its destination, you have to flip it over, and on the other side is a completely different set of moves. Okay?
Yeah.
It describes completely different moves. Now imagine this if you had a worker placement game, where instead of workers, you have tiles, and they describe on one side how they can be used on certain spaces or have a particular effect. And when they land, then you flip them, and then when you move them again, they have a different effect and have different places where they can go.
Yeah, you're pushing this in some. This sounds like a really big space here, Trent. Like there could be. It sounds like something the next Argent will do. There's just going to be.
I know it's. I think there's some brain melt there real fast.
That's right.
Well, then you could even weirder. Like, in my brain went here. What if you had an hourglass? So that way, as soon as the workers flip, there's something that just didn't get used enough. Having actual sand timer hourglasses connected to workers, like in the game Time and Space.
Joe, you're not gonna believe that's my fourth one. I'm using the abstract. Okay, I'll go ahead and do my fourth. It's the abstract game Tamsk, where that's literally what it is. It's the forgotten game in the GIPS series, where the player pieces are sand timers.
See, the thing about the sand timers, it could be cool, right? But it adds this sort of dexterity element, and what Time and Space kind of felt like was waiting on the microwave. Because we were all sitting there, and it's he explained the game to me, and then the game started, and it was for 25 minutes we couldn't really talk that much because everybody needs to be able to make their move when their time comes due. And so it was interesting, but
Is that almost spaceships that does it or whatever?
It's supposed to be spaceships, yeah, and it's really bizarre. The game was just going for, I want to say, $4 or $5 on Cool Stuff's most recent sale.
What I heard is there was a broken element because there's your space stations can get clogged up and there's no way to just get crap out of it that you screwed up building.
Well, the way that the game rewards points just kind of makes it so that everybody ends up visiting everybody equally, and everybody ends up with the same points. And so it really feels like a simulation that never got turned all the way into a game. Yeah. But Trent, what do you think about the sort of, what is it? Food. There's a kitchen rush, I think, right? Which I think Carmen from Game Surplus actually helped out with the showing of the Artipia games. He kind of demoed them for the Kitchen Rush game, where it uses essentially timers that food's done when the timer is done. But this is flipped, making it so that it's one ability when it's this time and one ability when it's flipped. That adds a sort of, that almost feels like a judo chop type game. There's try playing, bring that up to your wife. Make it like the Duke, except it's sand timers. So that these it's a board where the pieces and their functions are consistently mutating as the game goes on. This is the pretzel brain.
Let's do this. Let's do this. I've got it even better. Here's what we do. You ready for this? Here's what we do. We got your workers, like I said, that are double-sided and they change based on how they flip. But the sides are removable a la Dice Forge. You can upgrade them.
And so these are ongoing, and you must roll them like the rocket dice that Andy loves so much.
No rolling. No rolling.
Okay.
No. What we need to see too is the sand timer as used in code names, used in any game that has the potential for AP.
So how it's done in Galaxy Trucker.
Yeah, just someone's
how it's done in Galaxy
someone's
Trucker.
sitting here there, and you just put a sand timer flipped in front of them, and be like.
There you go. Just how much time you got.
Whenever the timer gets flipped in a round of Galaxy Trucker, every time I've ever played it, someone's kind of irritated.
Yeah. There's one person who's not finding the time.
Yeah.
Well, no. Well, I just remember when our friend Nate did it, because I think it was in Carson City, and he was having a bad day, and he could not figure. He kept APing out. We just saw him walk up, go over to a box of code names, bring over a sand timer, and turn it over facing himself so he could make a decision.
Yeah, he did it to himself, which is what made it. Yeah,
well, that was code names. You could just be like, "No, I'm going to flip it."
And then, I think he used it for himself first. But yeah, that was amusing. So, yeah, no, I agree. Just have more games come with the sand timer, just because that way you can just, hey, this is part of the game. Doesn't you don't have to have a group sand timer that makes it oh, you thought of that. It's already in the game. So, you got the deniability there. Oh, hey, look, there's a sand timer and you're taking a long time. Boom.
Yep. Well, and the best part is, because then it becomes a meta game. So it's gets back around and it's your turn. Someone's like, oh, remember when you sand timered me? They just
all right
with it immediately.
We just like skated through your list there, Trent. So we had sand timers, like pieces that had sand timers, and then pieces that flip and become other abilities.
Yes.
I'm very, very fascinated with the idea of the pieces that flip. All right, my next one that go ahead.
I was just going to mention the sand timer one a little bit more. The way to imagine that is imagine if chess, all the pieces had sand timers, and you can really only get a check or a check. You can only really get a check or a checkmate when the sand timers are empty on the other player's pieces. So it kind of becomes a little bit like speed chess, but the individual pieces have the timers on it.
Oh,
yeah.
God.
So you want to be just like flipping them at specific times because they're only activated as long as they're empty.
Well, you can spend your turn just to flip a timer and the guy doesn't move. But if you want to be able to move a piece, it's got to have a timer that's still going down.
I feel like this might be a chess variant somewhere.
It might be, but it's Tamsk. It was the one version of the. It was the one entry in the gift series that they didn't reprint.
They just let it die.
Loved by loads of people. Then
I've never even heard of it, dude. That's hilarious. All right, so next up for me, I wanted to venture off into a game that I really enjoyed, and I know that this is the reason a lot of people hate it. So ignore me if you start to feel your blood boil. Just tune me out. Tune me out for a while. All right, so Blood Rage has like the Loki god, where it's like you want to be involved in battles so you can like actively die and then hurt the player that wins, right? And I feel like what this does is it sort of makes it so that you can either win battles by winning them or win battles by strategically positioning yourself so that you can lose every battle and gain benefits from it. But you don't have to you don't just win the game by doing this. What it does is it contributes to your economy to the point where you can win other battles, and many times you're winning battles where people have already blown their biggest card, right? So there's a big sort of trickster element to it that fits the Loki god. I want to see this more in more conflict games where you have the ability to actually win a battle or an encounter, benefit from it without necessarily winning it. And I know that you can probably find this in other games, but I feel like there's nowhere where it's as strong as in Blood Rage, because it literally makes a sort of resource management game out of the the sort of fog of war, just all of war. And it's no, there's resources here that you can sort of sit on and actually lose battles and create Pyrrhic victories for your opponents. And I don't feel like that's done enough. I feel like it's almost always just like murder ball versus murder ball, and whoever's murder ball skitters out first, just loses. Whereas you can do a lot of losing and it's actually winning in Blood Rage. So losing to win a sort of thematic, dice chucker conflict theme that I wish I could see done more, though I bet it's the reason that everybody who loves Chaos in the Old World hates Blood Rage.
Well, they kind of do. Well, I don't know, maybe something like that. And some of the war games I have or have seen, where a game has a bluffing element, so you can basically have cards that are dummy cards.
Mm-hmm.
So you can be like, hey, I'm putting all these cards in this, so this is a place I'm definitely going to attack. And then there's 1+1 card and 4+0 dummy cards in it to kind of bluff somebody into putting all their resources there. A similar thing actually is being done in the Estates, the spiritual successor there to Neue Heime. No, is it? No, it's Container. It's Container. They did this because Container you bid with card money, right? So they added in these 0 cards, and everyone has a 0 card. And if you put that in your blind bid, then no matter how many cards you have in there, your bid is actually 0. So that way it still looks like you have something in your hand, and you're not just, I'm bidding 0, obviously.
So something where you actually have a coin that says 0 on it. It's like Robinson, or not Robinson Crusoe, Francis Drake. Strange game. I've brought it up now twice in one episode, and I haven't talked about it for probably 2-3 years. Francis Drake has when when you're drafting actions on the Caribbean board, it's like you're going to a place, but you're putting down a face down token, and the order of your trip is what people don't know. They'll know where you're going, but they don't know which is your 1, which is your 2, which is your 3. And, like that's where, you might want a specific thing from a specific place, and you might want to snipe somebody else, but you don't know what number they've put down. And so I think it's kind of cool when you can hide it. But I see what you're saying here. Like, so frequently it's like, what am I bidding? And you just see somebody who has their hand resting on the table, obviously empty, and they just put their hand up in a fist in the middle. It's like, I wonder how much I need to bid to beat you.
Yeah. So they're doing something like that. Yeah, where they can kind of cards to fake people out to keep them guessing a little better.
Wayne, did you have more to go on your list?
A big one I really want to see, and I just don't so much, is I want to see stocks and shares used in more Euro games as something besides a point track.
Mm-hmm.
So where so many economic Euro games, which don't get me wrong, love Arkwright, it's just a point track at the end of the game. There's no major reason to buy or sell other people's shares, even though there's a variant in it. It's not really necessary. But in so many Euro games that say they're doing a stock market or they have shares, it's really just a method of calculating end game points instead of economic games like an 18xx or something where you can sell them to fund other things, to do other things, to change turn order or stuff like that. So I would like to see them used somehow in a Euro game as more than just a point track, I guess.
For sure, man. I think that if stocks are in a game, they should matter. And I'm still on the fence of whether or not the latest Uwe Rosenberg game that probably has the most, I don't know, it has payouts, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have stocks, you have your own stocks, and you have a certain amount of fish that you make. I mean, you do have shares, right? I mean, it's paying out every single round too.
See, and that's better than a lot because, even Arkwright or what is it? The Africa one that has stocks and shares.
Mombasa.
Mombasa. They don't really have that kind of payout mechanism to them. It's they're points for an end game. They're never going to give me anything in the middle of the game. Yeah,
no, they definitely represent it's all about end game points and which one you're trying to make the most powerful, which company will be the most powerful at the end, because it does get to the point where you're just kind of fighting over turf with other companies that other players are invested in.
So thematically, you want a game where you get perks from being the main shareholder?
Yeah, something like that.
Got it.
Okay. Cool. So another mechanism thing, and I was just going to kind of clean up. There isn't a whole ton. I mean, mine. I don't feel like we're super. I don't know. The Glass Road one to me is really the one I feel most passionate about. But this next one here is almost like a pipe dream, but it kind of. I liked the way that it worked here, and I've never seen it again. And that's Sulkin. Sulkin, I feel like is it's a game where essentially you put a bunch of toast in the toaster, and then you're it's like you're putting your toast in different areas and then waiting for a certain amount of time, and then you're going to pull it all out at the same time. And so you want some of your toast to get burnt, some of your toast just to get warmed, and some of your it's weird because the passage of time in the game, you'll have an idea of what action you want to take, but you're gonna okay, I'm putting this here, and on 2 turns I'll be able to pull off this one, this one, this one, and this one. When you pull off your workers, you can pull them off from wherever you want. But when you place them down, you can only place them on one of the resource wheels. And just the way that you sort of can sit there and the longer you wait to pull off, the better the action can get. I think that's a really interesting thing that didn't get explored by any other game, especially not at the level Sulkin explored it so completely. Yeah. In one in a Euro experience, because you got these 5 different interlocking wheels, and I mean just having 1 wheel or 2 wheels that based on each other, but it's all these interlocking wheels, and I think it was done super super well, and I look forward to. I think that the guys that designed that are actually I heard that there was one that was Aztec themed that was getting compared to Tzolk'in a little bit.
I've heard of that. I don't remember what it was called though.
I think those guys might have moved on into like kind of dice and stuff because I think there was just such a specific, but such a well executed part of the game.
Well,
I mean,
and the best part about that is, too, is it's a game like that hinges on timing. And you've got that token where you can move the wheel twice. So if someone's ahead of you and you're like, oh, you've got that figured down to the one, move it twice. Oh, look at them plans.
And then you have somebody that like goes back to the beginning. Oh.
Yeah. So that, it's interesting because there is so much planning, but there is that just that smidge of chaos you could introduce into the best well-made plans.
This is kind of cynical, and I don't want, obviously write this down because I'm saying I don't want this to be taken seriously, but like, I really loved Robinson Crusoe, Adventures on the Cursed Island, and everything else that Portal Games has come out with, like Ignacy Trzewiczek has been behind, seems like it always has like pretty bad misprints or typos or just development work needed to be done. Like it's like they're sort of, kind of slapped together and then releasing a lot of their stuff. And I feel like they need to just have more time when Ignacy gets a game to the point where he would normally publish it. And he needs to go down to talk to Vlada again because Vlada, together with Ignacy's ideas, is why is one of the large reasons I feel like we have to thank. That's what we had to thank for Robinson Crusoe. It's such a great game, and it's just like I wish that Ignacy would work with Vlada more often. Like consult Vlada before he publishes his next game.
Y'all.
Some people are more ideas, and some people are more developing. Some people more about like execution, and so I mean,
like even Phil Eklund says he's like, I'm a game theorist. I suck at develop. Like most of it is like Phil coming up with like crazy out there ideas, and then his son going, "Okay, Dad, we actually have to sell this thing. Like, let's make it make some sense."
Yeah. Is there anything that I think Andy, you've probably got more on your list to go down.
Really, he only had
some of them.
Two I thought worth bringing up.
Okay.
Were a couple different styles of auctions that I only see in one game that would be interesting to see in more. And that would be the Age of Steam auction. I really, really like that, where it's like, in a 4-player game, the first one to pull out pays nothing, no matter what they've bid. Like the second person to go out pays half, and then the next two are in it for full. So why not just fight it out? Like that kind of different payout based on when you exit the auction is kind of interesting. The other one I really like, I've only ever seen in one place, is the Indonesia style auction, where you're paid out based essentially on the shares you have of that company. So if you're trying to merge your company with somebody else's and you both have essentially the same number of tokens on the board, then whatever bid you're making, you're going to get half of that money back again because you already own part of it. So that makes for an interesting, like, insane bid calculation. Because then it also makes it tough because other people could buy it. But now instead of getting half their money back, they're going to pay out all the money to two different players. So how does that change the game state, So that auction just is wacky, and it really causes you to sit there and think about, is this really worth it? Like, or when is it not worth it?
Yeah. I love Age of Steam for that, dude. I think that where you're pushing though, I mean, just like these types of auctions that I feel like, Andy, if you really want to go shopping for auctions, just look at Knizia's output from 15 to 20 years ago, and you're going to find it. And I feel like each of those could be now employed in a larger game, and I think to very great effect if the principles are conceived or conserved.
Absolutely.
I was going to jump in there with Vasco da Gama because I take every opportunity I can to talk about how amazing this game is, considering that it has been totally disrespected by people who just couldn't quite understand it. And to me, like, turn order is ultimately the deciding factor in Euro games. If you can really look at what people are all doing, you know, like if there's ever action selection, you can point at it and say, oh, well, this is the ideal action to take in this situation. You can, you know, like say like, okay, well, then turn order is ultimately who decides who wins and loses, you know, because the advantage that getting to choose first gives you. Well, I think that Vasco da Gama has the most interesting way of jockeying around with turn order, because you have like all these different call numbers. You'll choose, they're 1 through 20. You choose one of them, assign it to one of your workers, and then place that out. Now, when that gets called, you can either choose to take the action or forego the action and get a certain amount of money. The later that you chose, the later that it is, the more money you can get. But usually, the later that it is, the better it is for you to be able to just take the action. Because if it's too early, there's a certain threshold that you have to start paying for them. And so it's like there's a lot of interesting, like, the turn order, it goes through smoothly because it's just like people are looking and it's like calling out bingo numbers. All right, who's got number 3? All right, who's number 4 now? Who's number 5? And you can see whose turn it is. And the game tends to move along nicely because of that, because you're like consistently working through the numbers, whereas variable turn order can get really messy. I like what this does to allow players to mess around with when they want to do actions. I think that it involves some sort of like backwards planning to a certain extent, and can have a really interesting backwards planning. But I think that it's something that really never got used again after Vasco da Gama that I'm aware of, and it's fantastic and something that I'd like to see in a worker placement game for how turn order gets determined. It's Vasco da Gama. Andy, did we exhaust your list?
Yeah, that was pretty much all I had.
Did we do anything else, dude? Any honorable mentions here before we go? And I know it's not honorable mentions. You had like 10 things, didn't you?
About 8-ish, I think.
Okay.
But yeah. No, I thought a couple of them were just like, you know, spitballing and like fairly vague. So yeah, all the main ones I wanted to talk about, I got covered.
Good to hear. All right. Well, Trent, did you get everything in there?
Yeah.
Anything rise up to the top here while you were absorbing the the out
nope.
there the
no my sand timer emptied out.
Sand timer's done.
All right, we'll flip those sand timers now into the hype section of our podcast, which I'm going to have Trent actually kick us off then, because it's a new Kickstarter with all sorts of crap. I couldn't believe how much stuff has been released for this game when I saw the advertisements for Kickstarter. Like this was just like at least off the radar or something.
I'm going to talk about Snowdonia Deluxe, which is currently on Kickstarter. I have the base game Snowdonia and a couple of random scenarios that were printed over the years. And this version basically has everything that's ever been made for Snowdonia, all the different scenarios, which there seems to be dozens. I can't even there's just so much junk in this for Snowdonia. And what I'm going to say about Snowdonia is this. I like the game, and I'll say this much. I played the default basic scenario several times, and I started to get tired of the game and felt like, maybe I've seen enough from Snowdonia. What I found is that the scenarios for Snowdonia are a lot like maps in Age of Steam. They really make the game feel different. Really change it up. It's still got the same basic structure, but the game feels really different. And this has a bunch of scenarios in it, and I gotta say, I backed it. Snowdonia is a really solid game underneath it. And like I said, if Age of Steam was just the default Age of Steam map that comes in every copy of Age of Steam, I'd probably get tired of Age of Steam after a while. But it's all those maps that keep me wanting to come back to Age of Steam probably every month for the rest of my life. Snowdonia is not quite there, but it's pretty close. This is a very solid game, and the number of scenarios that's in this deluxe edition is ridiculous. Now, the box seems like it's still overly big, even for the amount of stuff in it. I'm not really sure what's going on with that. I don't know whether there's some stuff that hasn't been announced in the Kickstarter or what, but we'll find out.
The rubble will be actual rubble.
I don't really know. The box still seems kind of big, but there's a lot of stuff in this Kickstarter, and I will say that the scenarios each reward some replays. And I'm backing it because even though I have Snowdonia, it's because there's so many scenarios that I don't even know how to track down. I don't even know where to start to find some of these on my own. So I'm just probably going to pass along my copy to someone else and get this one.
Did they have like an upgrade pack kind of thing too, or was it just?
I don't think so. I didn't see anything. I think it's because there's so many different pieces that have come out here and there and everywhere all over the place.
Just can't do it.
I don't think you just can't do it.
Well, what this game really gets done right is that the original Snowdonia, or at least the original deluxe version, came with different sculpts of plastic miniatures, and this deluxe edition has replaced those sculpted plastic miniatures of the different types of workers you have in the game. There's 3 different types, and this one has wood, only wood, and so it knows that if you're playing, if you got a Euro game, it must be wood. If it's plastic, we know that it's not as good.
I feel like there's a lot of things going on that are very right in this, and there's a ton of content in the box. So
I think it's cool that they've put so many things together. What's interesting about this is instead of a map, you always play on the same board, but it's like a different deck of cards. You always lay out the cards, which kind of represent the sort of the mountain that you're building up. And that's what kind of, okay, so he's applying, I wonder how these change, because the big thing that makes Snowdonia different from other railway games is that you have to like clear out the rubble before you can actually build any of the railway. And so it makes it kind of like, you're pushing forward down the line, but then you've got to clear rubble, which you'll actually use that rubble then as like a resource, as I recall. But the thing that, like, building a bridge, like one of them is a bridge. There's some crazy things going on here. And there's like a necropolis one that has like dead, and there's a war-themed one, the Siege of St. Petersburg. There's some interesting, like, these scenarios sound like they're going to push the game to have totally new mechanisms, which is what most maps in Age of Steam are going to do.
They're like Age of Steam. Like I said, I had played the default one. I don't even know what the name of it is. Several times for Snowdonia, I was starting to get bored with it. And then I played another scenario, and it was like playing a different game. And so I was like, whoa. And then the best analogy I can make is Age of Steam maps. It's like, it's the same system, but a different deck of cards changes everything.
But yeah, it needs to just have more people designing these decks of cards for it. I would say the main thing about Snowdonia is it's different workers, how there is different workers that do different roles. I felt like that was okay, but it was not that impactful. I mean, it's an important part of the game to have the right workers, but I felt like it was kind of, I don't know, it was more of a minor thing. It wasn't as central as what I was hoping, I guess. But it does have a good sense of humor. They have a cloth bag in this deluxe box that is black as night and big enough to fit a hand of legendary size, which, if you were wondering, is Trent. That's
yes, I have a hand of legendary size.
Banana hands, Trent.
I have small hands like our president.
Yeah. Trent's hands are pretty huge, so I wondered, Trent, we're gonna have to have them send this to you, because you're the only legendary hand size person that I know. Because I don't know, did they consult you before they printed this cloth bag? Because we might be picking apart their Kickstarter here, Trent.
Well, no, they didn't consult me. I'm disappointed.
It's the size of a garbage bag. It'll be fine. No.
Oh boy. Well. I was going to say, speaking of garbage, but I feel like that would get associated too much with the actual game. So
if you want to get the idea of the size of my hand, I can make a 12-ounce can of soda completely disappear from visual view. That's not a joke. I can. That should tell you something right there.
All right. Well, Andy, so some people have big hands. Other people have big shoulders.
Yeah. All right, so I'm gonna.
I worked so hard for that, and then you took it from me. You took it from me.
All right, so I'm gonna talk. And this is a game that has been hyped and talked about on the podcast before. The City of the Big Shoulders. So this was a game that was it was really being kicked around, sort of heading for Kickstarter, and this would have been, was it a year ago or 2 years ago that somewhere in there. A year or two ago, because we even had the designer Raymond Chandler the third on the podcast, right? We did the interview with him.
Yeah. We had Ray Chandler. Yeah.
Anyway, I guess what had happened was that he had hit some kind of like life issues that, just designing a game was not as much of a priority anymore. But I noticed about probably a month ago, that like this game started kind of just popping up again. Like there was no big announcement that I saw or anything, but it's just like, hey, I'm going to be at this convention with a copy of City of the Big Shoulders to demo. Like it just kind of started popping up again. And just kind of having played the prototype of it, which I still have, I should bring the game night again.
Yeah, you should, dude.
Absolutely.
I love that game.
It's good to see this starting to make it out there again, and I'm really hoping he's heading towards a Kickstarter, maybe in the near future or whatnot. I know it's getting closer. Yeah.
Yes, he said that like there's one probably early August.
Yeah. So we know it's getting real closer, and I think we were all really good fans of it because this is really like people will ask. So I like Euro games, and I'm kind of curious about these economic 18xx games. What's like a game I could play that would get me there? And some people use Arkwright, and I'm like, man, Arkwright really? No, like it's its own economic Euro. But City of the Big Shoulders is really an 18xx meets a Euro game and done well. And
all the pieces are well thought. Like there's not like you mentioned Arkwright earlier when you were like the shares just don't, you know.
Yeah, the shares, like the shares in this are what I think of when I think of shares being used in Euro games in a better way.
Like fractional ownership as opposed to just like investment and funding.
Right, and they have payouts. They do everything they do in these economic 18xx games I love, but then they have this nice Euro cube management as well as resource management, resource conversion,
company drafting as well. I mean, that's like knowing, like, because there's certain companies that are in the game and certain ones that aren't, and being able to, it is.
And buildings to build, even where do you want to put your best choices? There's a lot to think over, and so it's just good to see this game start moving, because I'd kind of gotten worried that it had just kind of fallen away and would never see the light of day. And I think this game is one that it needs to be made. It is a really good game.
Hey, listen, hear us.
Yeah. Review copy. No, I'm kidding.
Already got Andy's prototype copy is fantastic. So you need to keep bringing that, just if nothing else, just to keep showing people.
Right. And so, it's good that this is on the move again. Raymond was an awesome guy. We had a really good interview with him. I'm just glad to see that hopefully things have settled down in his life and that this is kind of working its way to completion, because I know there's been a lot of people that have been enamored with this game that were kind of just like, what happened? Well, the good news is it seems to be moving along and here coming out in the near future. So that's City of the Big Shoulders. If you like economic Euros, definitely would be one to check out.
Thanks, Andy. And I will be finishing up this hype section with a look at Lowlands. It's actually all one word, so I've got the show notes are wrong because I tried searching for it. But what just blows my mind about Lowlands is... And so once again, my hype is going to be more of a rant, I guess. But like, what Lowlands is
why are you backing this thing?
Well, it popped up on store shelves. Like it was on the game store shelves last week, and I was like, "What is? I've never heard anything about it." You know, and maybe it's because I live in a hole, or I guess in the middle of a uninhabited cornfield. But Lowlands is being marketed as like as having a connection to Uwe Rosenberg. It's like specifically Uwe Rosenberg's like series, and which was bizarre to me because I was like, Uwe didn't design this. I looked to see like, did he design this? And it's like, no, it's designed by C&R Partenheimer. But I've never heard of these designers before.
That sounds like a pseudonym, I gotta say.
Oh gosh, am I that stupid? Hold on, I'm clicking on it here. It's Claudia Partenheimer, and then they're listed, and Ralph Partenheimer. I think they really exist, dude. I think the design
is the only game they ever designed.
It very much sounded when you said it like that. It sounded like a pseudonym. It really did.
Oh man, that makes it feel weird.
Now Joe's questioning how smart he was about this.
Oh boy. Well, it very well could be an Uwe Rosenberg game. I mean, it looks a lot like similar to an
Oh
Uwe
yeah, there's
Rosenberg.
like a giant sheep on the cover with farmers.
Yeah, it looks kind of calls to mind, any player board. If you've played an Uwe Rosenberg game, it's got like you're building, like fences onto a squared board, where you're trying to fence in animals. It appears. I mean, there's elements here that you're going to find in other games, but I mean, like it's okay. So it says Uwe Rosenberg Collection is what it says. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe this is like maybe Z-Man or in Fewerland Games was like, hey, Uwe, we want to publish your new game. Or maybe they had, already had this like sort of business thing. But then Uwe's like, all right, but I'm publishing it under a pseudonym. And they're like, nobody's going to buy it. Like, no, like your name is the reason that we have you working for us. I'm not sure, man. It just blows my mind. But I want to try it. I mean, it's got some decent reviews online on Board Game Geek. It's like a 7.4.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Like it looks like it's got a lot of different hallmarks of a Euro that I mean, it looks like there's buildings that you can draft that are different abilities, and it looks like you're kind of, like jockeying with other players, try to build those buildings before them. So I don't know.
You got to build dams.
Maybe it's Uwe Rosenberg's. Maybe it's his like follow-up, his spiritual successor to Caverna Cave versus Cave, which I thought was fantastic. And maybe this is him like applying it to more of a traditional farming theme as opposed to like this whole Caverna cave dwelling, marginal
Rosenberg's intern that looked at a lot of his designs and overheard conversations and thought, no, I'm kidding. I don't.
Just bizarre. I don't understand its existence. Like, who actually designed this game? Anyway, that's my hype of Lowlands.
Note, if you're the designers actually of this game and are not you Rosenberg, send a hate mail to @JoeSalad. No.
Oh. It's goodboardugly@gmail.com.
Yeah.
And all of your hate mail. Yeah, send it in. What is the thing that I do wrong most frequently to you? And transitions, I already know that. So I have.
I was going to suggest my answer to that question is leave out a key rule until the last minute when it really negatively affects you.
You know me. That's what I'm all about. It's about the win, Trent. I mean, in the end, you do what it takes to win. And if that means poorly teaching the game, hey, you know what? That's one of those aspects. You could have learned it from the rules. I didn't.
Hey, what's more important, building a local gaming community or stats on Board Game Geek?
I don't think
on Board Game Geek matters.
Nobody has to answer that. We all know what's important. we all know where we're all going with this. Yeah, it's Joe, about the dubs.
We got to go with Joe's like strengths. Like if he teaches us the game in Spanish, it will go better.
Hey, I'm going to use that one next time, Andy. Nobody's going to know what they're doing. You're getting crushed with that one. By the way, Tierras Bajas is what they call Lowlands. Apparently, there is a Spanish version of this game, which is interesting. There's not always a Spanish translation readily available. So anyway, that's what's wrong with me. And also, Lowlands is a new board game that I saw. So that brings us to this episode. The episode's ending. The Good, the Board, and the Ugly. I think your wife did a great job formulating this topic, Trent, because it was consistently intriguing debate, and I liked the different directions you guys took this. Really teased different ideas that I want to see happen, like in real life. And anyway, thanks, Andy. Thanks for being here.
Thank you,
Trent.
Having a good time.
Yep, it was a good episode.
I wasn't going to thank you. I was just waiting to see what you said. I'm not thanking you.
It was a good episode.
Not thanking you for that.
Was it a good episode? People care what we have to say. Oh, they do.
No, they haven't for a long time. But it's like watching a bunch. It's like they like watching us fight each other.
Yeah, it's like being a teacher in general.
Space Alert sucks.
We're all losers. The winners are our audience.
Yes.
We feel superior.
Next week we debate Terra Mystica or Gaia Project. No, we're not.
Yeah, we're gonna throw those ones off the top of a roof because that would never shut me up. That would be it. I would be done. You'd be able to get me derailed immediately and permanently. And that's the ending of this episode of The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly. Have a great week of gaming, and catch us next week on The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly.